Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here, and in this video I want to look at the chart of Leonard Cohen, famous singer, songwriter, poet. Guys, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already. Oops. Sorry. All right. Canadian singer, songwriter, poet, novelist. His work explored religion, politics, isolation, blah blah blah. Let's see. He was inducted in the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He pursued a career as a poet and novelist during the 50s and early 60s, and did not begin his music career until 67. And then he had many albums, and he did many different styles. And he was mostly known for his songwriting ability. He was an amazing songwriter. I think his voice was secondary. He's very poetic, and yeah, he had some legal problems with his manager who stole most of his money. There was a lot of legal battles. And as well as he went into Zen, which I'll briefly cover his life. He was born Jewish to a Jewish family, and religiously Jew. So that was part of his, that's a important part of his early upbringing. He studied music and poetry, fond of the poet Federico Garcia Lorca. And so early on, he was a poet and novelist, mildly successful. He had some critical praise, and in his poetry books and prose. Boston Globe stated, James Joyce is not dead. He's living in Montreal under the name of Cohen. So he did that for a while, and then I guess he wasn't as successful as he wanted to be. So he started writing music somewhere down the road along the lines that kind of called to him. Early on, he developed a musical relationship with Judy Collins. His song Suzanne became a hit for Judy Collins, who subsequently recorded a number of Cohen songs and was for many years his most recorded song. Colin recalls when she first met him, he said he could not sing or play the guitar, nor did he think Suzanne was even a song. And then he played me Suzanne. I said, Leonard, you must come with me to this big fundraiser I'm doing. Jimi Hendrix was on it. He'd never sung in front of a large audience before then. He got on stage and started singing. Everybody was going crazy. They loved it. And then he stopped about halfway through and walked off the stage. Everybody went nuts. They demanded that he come back. And I demanded. I said, I'll go out with you. So we went out and we sang it. And of course, that was the beginning. So that's kind of interesting. And then he has this amazing career with Joan Baez, sung his song. Yeah, and so he had a huge successful career, made many albums, many wonderful, beautiful songs. And as far as a songwriter, he's compared to Bob Dylan and Paul Simon. Like some people say that they're like among the top songwriters of all time. Let's see, speeding through this because I don't want to make it too long. Hallelujah was one of his huge big songs that many people covered. Rufus Wainwright, Jeff Buckley, John Cale, I don't even know who he is. And then his song Everybody Knows, I'm Your Man, If It Be Your Will, were hits in the film Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater, I believe, was in that. and obviously a lot more success and so forth and so on. He took time off to he was interested in Zen and other types of Buddhism, and was even ordained a minister, I believe, and a monk. It's kind of hard to find the exact location where it talks about that. His manager stole his money, and then he went on tour to recover some of his losses. He lost the rights to a lot of his music, which is interesting because probably because of his whole philosophical religious outlook. He said it was a blessing because he shouldn't get rich off such a, I don't know how he put it, like wonderful song or something like that. Like he didn't want to get rich off of his music, but he needed enough money to live comfortably. That's pretty much what everyone wants. Well, I don't want to speak for everyone, but a lot of people. What else? Yeah, huge cultural impact. He had children, he had relationships. Marianne was his first wife, I believe, and he wrote song Marianne. And then she died, and he wrote in an email, "Dearest Marianne, I'm just a little behind you, close enough to take your hand. This old body has given up just as yours has too. I've never forgotten your love and your beauty, but you know that. I don't have to say anymore. Safe travels, old friends. See you down the road. Endless love and gratitude, your Leonard." He had a brief relationship with Janis Joplin, which I think basically everyone did when she was alive in that era. She had thousands of relationships, so that's not unusual, but worth mentioning. And he had 2 kids, I think. He was described as a Sabbath observant Jew. He keeps the Sabbath even while on tour. So how does he square the faith with his continued practice of Zen? Allen Ginsberg asked the same question many years ago. He said, well, for one thing, in the tradition of Zen that I practice, there is no prayerful worship. There is no affirmation of a deity. So theologically, there is no challenge to any Jewish belief. And this is I've heard this before, that you can be any religion and practice Buddhism. Obviously, you can practice Buddhism however you want, in a very religious way, dogmatically, as people can practice any religion, either openly or dogmatically. That's up to them and the branch of religious ideology that they follow. But I've heard that before, that Buddhism is not a religion in that sense, although, like I said, it can be, obviously. He had varying political views, from the Communist Party to the Republican Party, blah, blah, blah. He was involved with Buddhism beginning in the 70s, ordained as a Rinzai Buddhist monk in 1996, continued to consider himself Jewish. I'm not looking for a new religion. I'm quite happy with the old one, with Judaism. In the 70s, he was associated with the Buddhist monk and Roshi, venerable teacher Kyozan Joshu Sasaki, regularly visiting at Mount Baldy Zen Center and serving as his personal assistant during a period of seclusion in the 90s. So I think at one point I read he took 5 years off to be a Zen monk, which is fascinating. He also was interested in Ramesh Balsekar, who taught from the Advaita Vedanta, which is very similar to Zen, but it's Hinduism. It's sort of like the Hindu Zen version. Yeah, so I mean, that's basically it. Then he died from leukemia. Okay, let's go to his astrology. Already, Virgo's sun conjunct the ascendant, exact. Right, and just 2 examples of that are Johann Sebastian Bach in Aries, and Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, and what was Abraham Lincoln's sun sign? Gosh, now I don't even remember Lincoln's sun sign. In any case, or ascendant. He's a Virgo sun, Virgo ascendant. So, right. So he walked off stage at least twice, and that's very Virgo. Virgo's like, maybe to its credit or to its fault, Virgo can be very self-doubting and denying, right? And that has to do with Leo being in the 12th whole sign house from Virgo. Leo's the pride, the confidence, the sunshine. So when that's hidden in the 12th house, Virgos can have that, it can disappear from the outer expression of Virgo. So they have this self-denying quality, and they operate from, I don't want to say an egoless state, but definitely not the pride and the overt ego that comes from with Leo, right? So that's very strong. They can be very self-doubting and denying, and in any case, critical, analytical, very sharp-minded. Sun in the first house gains angular strength. So it's very iconic, to have Sun in the first house or Sun conjunct the ascendant. And they are unto themselves like a big bright light, right? Like it's like the light shining on themselves. It's not really going out. It's just like they themselves are the sun, an iconic, right? So yeah, Virgo, very strong Virgo qualities: writing, analyzing, intellectual. So all of that is very strong. Also Venus, and Venus exactly conjunct Neptune, extremely conjunct Neptune by the 2 minutes off. So that's very tight. Venus, obviously creative, aesthetic. Venus does not do well in Virgo. I mean, I shouldn't say it doesn't do well. It's obviously debilitated, but Venus in Virgo has an excellent eye for arts and creativity and beauty. Like they really know what they want, right? They know exactly what they want. They know exactly how it needs to look, how it needs to feel, how it needs to sound, right? And if it's not right, they're not going to be happy. They're not going to be satisfied. They're going to get it right. But that's the Virgo perfection. Venus lends itself to the arts and creativity, music, writing, fashion, anything that has that creative quality, creative aestheticism, all that. Neptune obviously also is going to bring in the imagination and the subconscious creativity. It's pulling in a bit of 12th house due to the distance from the ascendant, but I'll give it, it's right on the border. It's 15 degrees from the ascendant. So this is 12th first, like right in the middle, I would say, right? It's obviously 12th quadrant, but first whole sign house. So, and 15 degrees, I'm saying, is the cutoff. That's what I think. So it's right there on that cusp between 12th first. So yeah, which is interesting. It's adding to his, and Venus in the first, you will see very much in the face, in the quality of the person. So we're not seeing that so much. Like he doesn't come off as like this Venusian type person, right? We can feel it in his voice, in his poetry, in his arts, but like he himself, his face, his appearance, he's not like a in other words, he's not like a model. He's not like this refined, Venusian beauty. And that's not a criticism. It's just kind of, I mean, when I look at him, I don't see that. I see a rustic quality, a very rustic, not beautiful on the surface, but beautiful underneath. Right. And he was very beautiful, like as a person, not as a figure, not like as a, he couldn't be like a fashion model, I don't think. Right. But Venus in the first house often, like if it's conjunct the ascendant or well in the first house, that it does give that quality. These people are often very beautiful. Right. In any case, this is very creative, but at the same time, very picky, very it being in Virgo, it's going to have a difficult time with relationships because Venus for a man will represent the women in his life. It's also square Chiron, and that's going to give it's going to make his even more difficult, this Venus, because Chiron, the square to Chiron, is going to bring in sort of rejection, unusual, like weird things. Chiron's very weird, very odd, pain. So his relationships could be very painful. His arts and creativity could have this element of strangeness, oddness, and perhaps expressing something very painful as well. There's a mutual reception between Venus and Jupiter, and this is very excellent because Mercury and Venus. Mercury is the ascendant lord. It's in the first, but approaching the second house and conjuncting Jupiter. And this is strengthening mutual reception, strengthen both planets involved. And it's by sign. Degree is not exact, but it's not, it's pretty close, right? And I actually have a mutual reception between Venus and Mercury, although his is better because it's more, the degrees are closer together. But this is excellent for writing, for poetry, because Mercury obviously is the intellect, the expression, the writing, and Venus is the aestheticism, the beauty, the artistry, the creativity, especially is tied to Neptune here, right? And this is going into his second house, so his voice, Jupiter is here. Is Mercury being conjunct Jupiter, obviously it's going to expand his mind, so he's not going to be like an academic, right? He's going to be much more philosophical, religious. That's the Jupiterian influence, and that's what he was, right? His singing, like, it's really interesting that he went into poetry first because his music is so poetic, so beautiful in that sense. Like if you just read the lyrics, it's like, wow, really, really strong poetic skill there. And that's rare. You don't find such high level of poetic lyrics in music. Oftentimes music can be dumbed down, especially pop music, right? But is very high level. So this is the Jupiter is elevating that. It's kind of, like I said, it's limiting his academic ability. So I don't expect with Mercury and Jupiter, you're not going to get like a mathematician or scientist, unless there are other factors, but usually it's going to limit that. It's going to limit academia, right? Because Jupiter is expanding Mercury. So the focus is not there. And Mercury also is contracting Jupiter. So it's not great for either, but it depends on other factors, which is going to be stronger. Mercury obviously is the ascendant lord. So, and it's dispositing 3 planets, so that's quite strong. And it's the MC lord. MC lord. Mercury is the MC lord as well. So his career is becoming Jupiterian, philosophical. I'll get to Jupiter more, but I want to look at the moon. Moon's in very creative Pisces. Compassionate, creative, imaginative, bringing in the subconscious element, spirituality as well. This combination, actually, I think this is the same as Michael Jackson, not in the same houses, but the same Virgo sun, Pisces moon, right? And that combination, the Pisces really bring in vast, creativity, like, and potential delusions, in fact. But Virgo, being opposite, is excellent to complement Pisces, the Pisces expansion. Virgo is the more contractive element and can discern. Virgo has excellent discernment and critical, analytical ability to parse out the nonsense from the gold, right? It's going to separate. Pisces is just taking it all in. It's very passive. Pisces is like the ocean. Everything goes in the ocean. And Virgo is going to take all that ocean water and take out all the important stuff and throw away. Virgo is the, keeping the baby, throwing away the bathwater. That's Virgo's, it's real skills. It's very skillful at organization, and analysis and cleaning, right? It's purifying, perfecting, right? So very creative. And these are opposite houses. 12th house, right, is the house of creativity. It's in Virgo. Moon's in Pisces in the 6th house. So we're getting a opposition in both. Not only that, Venus is debilitating in Virgo, but it's excelled by its conjunction to Neptune, which Neptune is the co-ruler of Pisces, right? So this is very mixed between creativity and analytical kind of perfectionism, as well as the mutual reception between Venus and Mercury ascendant lord, MC lord, right? So that's really interesting, that combination of very picky analytical Venus that's easily dissatisfied because nothing's right. With Virgo, nothing's right, everything's wrong. You're not doing it right for Virgo. Nobody's ever doing it right for Virgo, and is so critical, right? And then Pisces is like all embracing, accepting everything and just taking in the universe and expanding and imagining and dreaming. So really interesting. 6th house brings in like hard work, mundane, daily tasks, daily hard work, chop wood, carry water, write music, write poetry, that sort of thing. Right. So he's going to be hardworking at his creativity. 6th house also brings in health issues, especially in Pisces. Leukemia is a blood disease. So, so it's going to be with 6th house in Pisces. I mean, the 6th house lord is in Aquarius, but Moon in Pisces, both watery planets. So his disease is going to be much more invisible, kind of hidden quality. And so blood disease, I think, qualifies because it's something that's not going to be immediately noticed. You're not getting like a big, I don't know, obvious tumor or something that's just very physical and plain to see. It is physical, but it's a bit more hidden. It's a bit more subtle, right? So it fits. But he was already 80 something when he died, so so I mean, not too shabby. And it's probably because Saturn is in Aquarius, and Saturn's ruling the 6th house cusp, and Saturn does endure. So I mean, that's probably why that he didn't have a disease earlier, and he maintained his health for so long. Moon is ruling the 11th house cusp in the 6th house. So that's interesting. So there's going to be competition among groups and networks. And I'm thinking about his manager. Obviously that's not like, that's one person, right? But, and we could look to Jupiter for that, because Jupiter is ruling the 7th house cusp. But regardless, somehow, I mean, because Moon's in the 6th, and 6th house does relate to conflict and competition. And, so there's going to be some issues with the 11th house, with certain groups and involvement. Pluto is on the 11th house cusp. So I'm relating it to that. We could also look to Jupiter square Pluto for both, I mean, for several things. Number one, his relationships are going to be challenged very much by a square to Pluto, right? And that is going to bring death to his relationships, which did happen. Marianne died, not that young though, but still. The relationship died, but also this is very heavy for his faith, for his philosophy, for his religion. It's going to create depression, and he did have depression, right? Jupiter is what keeps us, positive, in the biggest sense, like a really Jupiter in good dignity with good aspects and a good house is going to be very positive about life. It's going to have great relationship to God. It's going to have great faith. No matter what happens, they're going to be able to keep things positive and not get dragged down into the darkness of depression, right? He was depressed. I mean, Pluto in Cancer, square Jupiter in Libra. Jupiter in Libra is okay, right? But the square, it's a really strong square, really tight square. This is heavy. Right. And I think that's why he was exploring different religions, like Zen, like Buddhism, like Advaita Vedanta, and even Judaism, and even had a relationship with Christ. And, I just got to say, like, some people, it's coming, the Jew haters are coming out of the woodwork, and they're like, oh, Jews believe this and that, Jews hate Christ. That's all nonsense. People are individuals, and you'd have to talk to all 15 million Jews in order to know what Jews think. They don't all think the same. I mean, that's just stupid people think that, just to be honest. I just want to put that out there. Stupid people think that all people of one group think the same, when there's no group that all thinks the same, except stupid people all think. Well, stupid people all don't think the same thing, but when people all think the same thing, they're all stupid. So anyway, yeah, I had to throw that out there. Yeah, he was exploring all different things, and this is very just uncomfortable. Squares really make you work hard, so he's going to work hard at Jupiter stuff, faith, religion, optimism, depression, and he meditated a lot, and he said that cured his depression. He learned to meditate in the Zen temple, I believe. I think that's what it said. But yeah, this is very difficult square. And causes a lot of trouble. Jupiter is in the second house, so this is good for finances. However, the square to Pluto will make it it brings in the death element. So like and we saw that, right? So his finances, right? It's going to take a fall. He's going to lose all his money at some point, even though his money is good. The square to Pluto will bring in death element, not actual death, but like the spirit of death. So like something dies and then it's reborn. All his money dies and he has to bring it back to life, and that's why he went to on tour again, right? So yeah, so his relationships are going to die as well periodically with the square to Jupiter. Jupiter's ruling the 7th. And Jupiter is ruling the 4th. So his connection as well to his, this could be issues. I didn't read anything about his early childhood, but Jupiter's ruling the early childhood. So there are issues around his early childhood that will have a Plutonic vibe to them. Abuse, death, deep, painful issues. The square is going to bring out the real heaviness of Pluto. Mother, Pluto in Cancer, could have had abusive mother, and again, I don't know. And maybe he kept it under wraps, maybe he didn't talk about it much, but there were probably issues around his early childhood, around his home, around homeland that were painful and difficult, for sure. Real estate issues as well. Pluto in the 11th house cusp is going to it's going to influence the kind of groups and networks that he belongs to. Also his public image, because it's still prominent. It's not in the, it's more in the 11th, because it's so close to the 11th house cusp. So I'm calling it 11th house. Also finances, 11th house. So I mean, you know, the square to Jupiter in the second, it's relating to finances as well. But career success is both powerful and up and down, right? And changing, transformative. And he changed his career. Now, he didn't change his career. Well, he did, from poet, a novelist, to musician, and then like he changed his styles a lot and his public image, right? Early Leonard Cohen's very different from later Leonard Cohen. The musical style. So there's some like transformative quality that's happening with his career, the success of his career, the ups and downs of his career. Mars and South Node are conjunct in the 11th house, in the 11th quadrant. You know, this is, I mean, it's coming into the 12th, but it's here, 11th with some 12th house influences. Mars is ruling the 8th and the 3rd. So early half of life was definitely about writing and communicating, right? And learning how to write poetry. Mars is ruling the 3rd. It's in Leo. Leo is very creative. Leo is very, wants to be famous, wants to be recognized, has a lot of pride, ego, and creativity, and wants to be in the center of the spotlight, right? And it's ruling the 8th house of shared resources, intimacy, sexuality, death, rebirth. And along with Pluto, he was known for, a lot of people thought he was dark, right? Believe it or not, like there's some like dark quality, dark element to him. And as well as there was some, I can't even remember, like some issue with sexuality, something, but that's bringing in the 8th house element, you know, this darkness along with Pluto, some sexuality. And I don't know what any of his poems are like. I've never read a single one of his poems. I just know that, you know, his songs are extremely poetic, extremely beautiful. Yeah, and so his early half of life was definitely more about writing, expressing creativity in the 3rd, well, so 3rd house, so writing, right? And that's, his whole life was about writing. But I mean, also, you know, he had some success, and 11th house is certainly, 11th house in Leo certainly seems pretty successful, but it wasn't major success. It wasn't until North Node, it wasn't until he was in his 30s that he started writing music. And so North Node started to become active. That's 5th house. That's, again, very creative, performance oriented, fun games, being on stage, being seen and heard. And it's in very good dignity. The 5th cusp and 6th cusp ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in Aquarius, and you can see here Saturn has 11 points on this scoring for this program. So it's a strong Saturn, and it's close enough to North Node that it's still being influenced. North Node would activate Saturn anyway, because it's activating its sign in Aquarius. So yeah, there was more success when his North Node started to become active, and as he got older, even more and more success. Right? So that's quite interesting, because I think the Saturn's is such good dignity that really helped out a lot. There's a light square to Jupiter. It's actually, if you look, Saturn would be in between Mercury and Jupiter, so it's activating this 2nd house as well by trine. So voice, right, and speaking, singing. So that's very prominent. So you can see the 2nd house the second half of his life is more successful than the first half. Although this is activating the sun in Virgo, so still there was success, but the voice didn't really come out till the North Node was activated because of the trine. Uranus is here on the 8th house cusp, so there's some like shocking, very independent quality in relationships. Like he's the type of person that can really detach because it's in such an intimate, it's very much in the 8th house, right? It's very close to the 8th house cusp. In 0 degrees Taurus. So unusual sexuality, very independent sexually, but also like in relationships, intimate relationships, you can just sort of go in and out because Uranus is like, it's so independent. It's just like, bam, like relationship, no relationship, just that's Uranus, and unique, unconventional, and like sort of like how he was known for walking off stage. I think that's Virgo, but I think that's also Uranus in the 8th house, because 8th house is a house of relationship as well. 6th, 7th, and 8th are all relationship houses in different ways. 7th is the main one, but 8th is about intimacy, shared resources, and like power and control and like domination. But when you're, I guess, when he's relating to the crowd and it's starting to become, I don't know, more intimate, I guess he can just sort of snap and just be like, okay, I'm done. And then he goes back, he leaves, and he comes back. He's done that like at least twice in the Wikipedia, it says that. So I think that's something to do with it. I think it also has to do with his shocking, a bit like provocative sexuality. I read something about that somewhere, and I'm a little fuzzy on the details. I apologize, but it's not very well. there's a little square to Pluto. That's not really strong. It would have to be 0 degrees Leo for it to be fully in effect. Slight opposition to Jupiter, but I don't know. I don't really think that's that impactful. There's a really strong trine from North Node to Chiron. So, and Chiron's also well in the 9th quadrant, 10th whole sign, but it's quite far. So this is 9th house. So his religion, his philosophy, is taking on a very Chironic vibe as well. So unusual, different, or the off the beaten path, rejected kind of thing. Like he's just going for like the really unusual type religion. So Zen, Advaita Vedanta, that sort of thing. It's bringing in that weird, unusual quality. It does have a sextile to South Node, so that's there all along. But the trine, I think, to the nodes are more important. Yeah. What else? I didn't even look at the Draconic chart, but the main thing is like this, for his voice, it's Jupiter and Mercury conjuncting the 2nd house, and mutual reception between Mercury and Venus. Mercury is his ascendant lord, is MC lord. Venus is the 2nd house lord, so his voice, 1st and 2nd are really trading places. So iconic, this very iconic quality with the voice and the poetry, Venus and Mercury. Venus and Mercury are excellent for music, for poetry, for arts and creativity and things like that, right? That's what they often represent. Yeah. Mars here makes me think that his, South Node to Mars and Leo, that there should have been something physical in his early life. I don't know how to relate that, but I don't know. South Node Mars are often, they can be in like the military, or with Carroll Shelby, it was racing and mechanics. So, often Wikipedia, I mean, it's just such a condensed version. You're not really getting all the details, but there could be something very, very Martian about his early life. Mars in Leo is still strong because Leo's a fire sign. I have my Mars in Leo. That is definitely strong for me. So there's also a semi-sextile to the sun and ascendant, which could make him, I mean, this could give him an aggressive edge, right? And I don't know his personality as a person, but I'm sure that he could become very, very aggressive, very angry at times when he was pushed. South Node will downplay it, especially as he gets older. Excuse me. It's going to make him more detached, especially with the Buddhist type, Zen training. He's going to be much more peaceful and calm, but I bet he could be explosive, especially when younger, and angry and quite aggressive. Virgo can be very, very sharp, right? If you get a Virgo angry, they can be, it's like razor, but they can really go for the jugular because of how keen their observations are. So they can really hurt. It's not Virgo's agenda to go around hurting people, but if they're angry, they can really be very hurtful, right? So I'm sure that he could be pretty strong, strongly aggressive, strongly, really cut somebody down if he needs to. Yeah. However, there is a 12th house element. I will say that. And Mars in the 12th house can be quite passive aggressive. It can be completely subdued sometimes with some people, right? You just will never see them angry with the Mars in the 12th house, depending on the aspects. But with this semi-square, I think it does come out sometime, and it's pretty much as well in the 11th. And groups and networks as well could take on a Martian quality. So yeah, there's that. I think that's pretty much it. Jupiter also has a light sesquisquare with Chiron, so again, that's re-emphasizing the philosophical religious kind of divergence, going off the beaten path, being Chironic, weird, unusual, different sort of things with religion and philosophy. But definitely depression with the square to Pluto. Let me just pull up his draconic. Didn't look at it. Pluto is quite close to this Venus. Yeah, so that's going to bring in a very, very strong element with his relationships and his creativity as well. Obsessive relationships, very intense, deep kind of quality to relationships and to his music. And this is re-emphasizing the sort of dark quality that a lot of people have expressed with his music. Adding to certainly depression and whatnot, and just a very intense, powerful creativity, powerful subconscious, destructive tendencies. Pluto in the 12th can really, because Pluto is sort of like you know, the under half of the iceberg, where like the top half is showing and the 12th house is like the under half. So Pluto in the 12th is sort of like this really, it's like the nagging, it's right behind you, and it's like this very nagging, like powerful destructive force. I've heard people say that Pluto in the 12th is found a lot of times in criminals, but like it just drives a person to be a little more destructive, but powerful in behind the scenes kind of way. These are like, you know, the real power. Pluto in the 12th is like the unseen power, heavy manipulative ability, but even not in the conscious mind. Like they can control people without even knowing they're controlling people. I have Pluto in the 12th, by the way. Just sharing that. Mars here in the first, Mars in Libra. So again, that's interesting because Mars in the first will tend to be quite Martian in appearance, Martian aggression and their personality and their whole being and their body and their persona. But Mars in Libra can be quite passive aggressive. So yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, like I bet when push comes to shove, he can be quite strong and aggressive, but it's probably subdued a lot of the times. Very strong second quadrant here in Scorpio. Venus, Neptune. Venus is not good dignity either one of these. Venus is in detriment in Scorpio, but very intense, very deep psychological, deep desires, passionate, obsessive quality. Second, third, so like, you know, voice and expression both, and it's also Sun and ascendant in Scorpio, second, third, so that's quite prominent. That's quite interesting. Jupiter gains a lot of dignity here in the, I mean, it's third quadrant, but moving into the fourth house. So that's interesting, being that he grew up religiously. I mean, at least his parents had a very strong Jewish religious influence. Jupiter is in Sag. Jupiter is religion, philosophy. Mercury is not so good here, but Jupiter is very, so that's third, fourth. Writing, expression, skills, being very Jupiterian, philosophical, religious, high-minded, that sort of thing. You know, Sag will not just be philosophy, religion, it's also like obviously like higher education, but also high-minded, so like high-level intellect, right? So that sort of thing. Aries here, it's not really conjunct any planets, but similar, it's 3 planets. So inspiring, you know, when Aries is in the 7th house, I mean, 7th cusp is obviously Pisces, but 7th quadrant is moving to Aries. When Aries is in the 7th house, there's a lot of inspiration because Aries is the fire starter, and when it's in the 7th house, that fire starter is connecting to others. So like in relationship, it's like lighting the fire for other people. That's inspiration. When you can light somebody else's fire, you're inspiring them. Aries in the 7th, when planets are in the 7th in Aries, it's very inspiring. Right. Saturn in Aries is not so good. It's quite hard, but nonetheless, Moon in Aries, South Node in Aries, or sorry, North Node. Well, North Node is always in Aries in the Draconic, but you know, definitely inspirational. Bringing that, inspiring others. Uranus, 9th quadrant, but pretty much conjunct the 10th house cusp. That's interesting. Definitely unique, independent, intellectually brilliant. You know, Uranus and Gemini, very airy. I'd say that's fitting as well. Chiron and Leo, you know, it's not really. This actually makes sense if you think about his religious like going into being a Zen monk for 5 years. And that's pretty intense. That would be 11th house. And yeah, and now that I'm thinking about relating it to that, like Mars ruling the 8th house. 8th house is deep sort of occult mysticism as well. It's sort of like the pre-spirituality of the 9th house. It can be very mystical. It is a water house. So in the 11th house, it's like mystical groups. So interesting. Anyway. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for Leonard Cohen. Tremendous poet, icon, and his voice is not what he's known for, but it is prominent within his chart. And one more thing, I think Jupiter ruling the 7th house is making his voice very personal, because 7th house is personal relationships. So I think there is a really, even though his voice wasn't like phenomenal, it did have this very touching quality, because that 7th house, personal relationships, he was really able to touch people with his voice. So I think that's interesting. All right, guys, I hope you found this interesting. Please hit the like button, subscribe if you have not already, leave a comment down below. You can say anything you want. Unless it's offensive, I might delete it, but and book a reading with me. My website is macroastrology.com, and my email is macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. All right, thank you. I'll see you again soon. Bye.